What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Honest Tattooer podcast. My name is John Mesa. I'm joined by my co-host, Matt Triano.
Hey, how you doing?
My boy G Money in the house.
What's up, guys? I'm
and
back.
Our very special guest. But before we get there, we want to thank our sponsors. This show is brought to you by Tattoo Smart, Tattoo Pro, and Steadfast Tattoo Supplies. Now, on to the show. Tommy, welcome to the podcast, man.
Well, thank you. I'm flattered that you guys had me.
No, thanks for coming out.
Welcome.
So for those that don't know you, let them know your full name, where you're from, how long you've been tattooing, and what kind of tattoos you like to do.
My name is Tommy Houlihan, and I've been tattooing since 1989, almost exclusively in New York City. And what do I prefer to do? I like anatomy. I like doing the Greek statues and that kind of stuff.
Nice.
Cool.
But what the reality is, my shop's in Times Square, so I do little stamps all day long.
Man, how is it working in Times Square? I always thought that the kind of tattoos you get to do there are going to be different than the kind of tattoos you do.
Well, it's a tourist. I mean, that's like the mecca for tourism.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, all I'm doing all day long, and I'm not knocking this. I mean, I'm a professional tattooer. This is what I do for a living.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't besmirch anything that people want me to do.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things that I won't do on people, but it's skylines, apples, NYC, that sort of thing. Little Statue of Liberties.
Okay.
Yeah.
All the quick bangers too, right?
Yeah. It takes longer to set up than it does to do the piece.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how do people find you, would you say? Where's your shop located?
My shop is on 46th Street between Times Square and 8th Avenue.
Okay.
So I was there before everybody else that's there now. Everybody that's there is either there directly because of me or indirectly because of me.
Yeah.
But yeah, for 46 between Times Square and 8th, which is Times Square. And then the next neighborhood over is Hell's Kitchen, is where I was born and raised.
Oh, shit. So you're like New York City.
Mm.
You don't meet a lot of New York, like New York City.
Yeah.
What's the name of the shop?
Times Square Tattoo.
Times Square Tattoos.
Can't go wrong with that.
Can't go wrong.
No, that's it right there.
Yeah, that's it. And the tourists are like, where do I get tattooed near Times Square? So, they
That's an excellent name.
They Google it and
Mm-hmm.
look it up, and it makes it pretty easy for them. I always said that if you're going to open up a business a shop, you got to name the shop at the location that you're at.
It's smart.
It is.
Smart thing to do.
Like I owned a shop in the Bronx for a long time, up on City Island Tattoo.
Yeah.
All the people from Westchester is like, well, where do I get tattooed around here?
Yeah.
City Island Tattoo, or like City, or a lot of tourists go there as well.
Yeah.
And they would look it up, and so that's a pretty good way to if somebody wants to start a business, wants to start a shop. I mean, if somebody's in Trenton, I don't know if there's any shops called Trenton Tattoo, but somebody should open one.
Man, there was a tattoo shop that's down the street from us, and it had a different name that it does now. And they ended up dropping that name and just calling it Orchard Street Tattoos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it didn't take long for them to realize that they should change their name.
They changed their name. Yeah.
The shop that I was working at before coming over here
Yeah.
was shout out to Willie and Adam. Their shop, Brooklyn Tattoo in Brooklyn.
Yeah, there you go.
There, yeah.
It's a great name.
Yeah.
Somebody just tried to sell me a name that they came up with, a New York City name. And, people are trying to do that now. I think they wanted to sell me the name, a domain name called Manhattan Tattooing or something.
Man, I get emails like that all the time. People trying to sell me tattoo names. But as we were talking about this, do you guys remember I think it was like Johnny Knoxville had an episode where they went to a place in Connecticut that's called My Anus.
True story?
Bro, there's a place called My Anus in Connecticut. If you drive to Stanford, you're going to pass by My Anus.
That's oh my Lord.
Dude, and I just thought, I was like, somebody's going to open My Anus tattoo right about now, dude.
They hate us because they ain't us.
Yeah, dude. Oh shit. But the whole time we're talking about, I was like, oh my God, somebody needs to open My Anus tattoo right now. Good Lord. Dude, how much has, that Hell's Kitchen and Times Square area changed? I mean, I mean, I remember when I was a little kid and my uncle would be like, let's go drive by Town Square and look at the hookers. You know,
Yeah.
Well, you know, it was still like, did you ever see the movie Midnight Cowboy?
Yes.
It was still kind of like that up until Bloomberg got in office.
Right.
Bloomberg is Mayor Bloomberg. He's the one that changed Times Square and turned it into like, you know, this
mall of
New
York City.
Yeah, he's, you know,
this mall of the world.
Yeah. So like in towards the late 80s, I mean, everything was boarded up and shut down on 42nd Street, you know, and it stayed like that until the early 90s. And then that's when they started opening up things. They took over a lot of the porno theaters. There was just so much porn there, you know?
Yeah.
But they took all that stuff out. It was boarded up for a long time. And then they started like rebuilding and gentrifying it. Now on the west side of Manhattan, you were able to get a 2-bedroom apartment for like, even in the 80s, you could have got a 2-bedroom apartment for $300 a month over there, you know?
Ooh. Yeah, nobody wanted to be in that area.
Yeah. And there was still the prostitutes walking the streets and the pimps with the canary yellow suits and the feather in their hat. And my grandfather actually owned the Mayfair Hotel on 49th Street between Times Square and 8th.
Wild.
And that's right across the street from St. Malachi's Church. And he had that place. He had it for about 50 years. So when I was a kid, we were always in the hotel, you know, and it was kind of a short sheets kind of place. There was all kind of characters that came through there, you know. I don't know if you ever heard. Maybe you're the crowd listening. You might be too young for this, but there used to be a very famous stripper called Gypsy Rose Lee. You know, yeah, I know you guys. But if you look her up, she was like the predecessor for the burlesque people now, and she was going on some trip around the world, and she told my grandfather she couldn't pay the rent, so hold on to my trunk because they still had trunks.
Oh wow!
And he said okay, and when she didn't show back up, he wanted to move the trunk, but he couldn't move it. She actually nailed it to the floor.
What?
Yeah, so you used to get stuff like that.
Wow.
But
dude.
if people who are into burlesque and that kind of thing, they would know who she is.
Okay.
But that was just, I mean, I'm talking from like the late 40s up until the late 80s. You know, that's when he owned it. So
different time.
A lot of different people going through, all kinds of people going through there.
Mm.
So.
I remember when I was going to school, getting dropped off at the Port Authority and then walking through like that whole area, and like it felt like every other shop was just selling
souvenir shop.
Well, no, they were just selling like magazines, DVDs, like porn magazines.
Oh,
DVDs,
Yeah, and head shops like the bottles of Rush and
it's not like that. I haven't been up there in a while, but
Not at all.
Those kind of shops are making a comeback now, but they're the weed shops.
Yeah.
They're selling all that stuff too, and they're opening and closing. Like they open up and
they come and go
3 weeks later. You know, they're everywhere. You didn't see that for a long time. You know, especially when Giuliani was in office.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he cracked down.
He was cracking down.
Oh, yeah, the cops over there on the west side, they were knocking the crap out of people. All
Stopping and frisking, everything.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I mean, they stopped at first everybody, including me. So, I wasn't immune to it.
Right.
You know? So, yeah.
They were cracking down on like if the fart in the air, and they were just like,
yeah. But it was also a lot of the Irish bars, at that time, the Westies, the Irish mob on the west side, they ran the west side of Manhattan over there in Hell's Kitchen.
Wow. Yeah.
And, some of those guys are still alive. If they're alive, they're doing life sentences if they survived it. Some of them got out. They're very geriatric now. They did 35 years or whatever. But then every now and then there's so-and-so, he killed that guy. It was in that book, So some of them are still creeping around, but that's all gone now. The west side of Manhattan, Hell's Kitchen. It's a lot of hole in the wall restaurants that people invested a lot of money in, but they change hands often. They change hands often. A lot of bubble tea places open up and shut down. It's not what it used to be.
I always think also a lot of these places, dude, they have to be just money laundering, dude, because how much money are you expecting to make out of bubble tea when there's 5 bubble tea shops right next to you, bro?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there has to be some kind of business, and they're like, yeah, dude, let's just put it on into this.
I think about that all the time.
Same,
Especially
same.
just walking down this street, like those Hasidic Jews guys that are selling like the lingeries and they're sitting outside on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Like, who's buying this stuff?
Well,
off
they
this guy?
probably own the building.
Or like the hardware stores that nobody's going into and buying stuff. Like they're like, I don't see you guys making a sale.
Yes. I think some of these situations, some of these people do own the buildings that they're at.
Yeah, a lot of them do.
Yeah.
You know,
Also-
a lot of, so like one thing about Orchard Street that it used to be like kind of like a garment district,
Mhm.
you know, back in like the 40s and stuff.
You
like
still see remnants of
You
it.
still see remnants of it. That's why Zarin Fabrics is still right there. And a lot of like these buildings were, you know, this was a very Jewish neighborhood, you know, once upon a time. And you can get a lot of that story, in which we actually should maybe take the tour. That is the Tenement Museum tour, which is right down the street.
Yeah,
Right up there.
We haven't done it, which is
No.
crazy. We also need to take Michelle Smiles tour,
we should.
Yes, we do.
which is also right down the street. I think
Dude,
that's
we
the
are
problem with having
terrible New
everything.
Yorkers.
Yeah.
I
The
know.
problem with having anything right down the street, that sometimes you're like, oh, it'll be there right there. You know?
Hey, I'm Russ Abbott. I am the founder of Tattoo Smart. I've also been tattooing for over 25 years. I use digital design tools in my tattoo process every day. And in this case, this video is going to explain a new product that I just created called the washi set. Now, the washi set is 17 handmade papers from Japan that I photographed and then turned into paper texture backgrounds, which you can use in Procreate. It also includes 21 different brushes that were designed for using with these papers, or it could be used with any background that you choose. As always, if you're interested in purchasing this or any of our other products, you can get them at tattoosmart.com.
You brought us some gifts actually today, and I threw it on my chain already, bro. I don't know if you saw this.
Yeah, I gotta grab a chain so I can put mine on there.
Yeah, where
I have something my mom gave me that's also like blessed, Mary and Jesus over here.
excellent.
Yeah.
I have a couple other medals for you guys that were blessed by an exorcist. So.
What?
Cool.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
tell me all about this and tell us where did it come from?
Well, what I gave you guys was blessed miraculous medals, and there's Catholic Church has got some sacramentals. You got the Rosary,
Mm-hmm.
blessed miraculous medal, and scapulars, which these are. I wear a 5-fold scapular.
Oh yeah, dude. My mom just gave me, shout out to my moms. She always the best to the moms out there. She brought me some blessed
Oil?
salt,
Blessed salt.
blessed salt
Blessed by
from an exorcist.
Well, the salt's got to be blessed by an exorcist.
Yeah, the salt's blessed by an exorcist, and oil blessed by the exorcist.
Yeah.
I got those at home.
Well, the thing about the miraculous medal, so I've always been a Catholic, right? But I haven't always been the best Catholic, and I've been tattooing over 30 years. And there was about a 5-year stretch where I was like, should I even be doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking, particularly in the last 5 or 6 years, I'm seeing nothing but nuns with upside down crosses on their faces, possessed nuns, burning churches, just a lot of inverted crosses. People getting it. You saw this stuff here and there over the years, but it seems like they're amping it up now. That's all you see.
Oh yeah, it's on full blast.
Yeah, the more Satan, and it's just Satan he infiltrates everything, and he's really got a hold in this industry. And the Blessed Mother doesn't have anybody evangelizing for her in tattooing. The tattooing has gotten huge. When I first started tattooing in New York City, there were 7 shops in all 5 boroughs.
Wow.
Ooh.
That's wild.
Wow.
Yeah, there were 7 shops, but now 22 of them open up in the Times Square area. And they're closing as fast as they're opening.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen a major shift in the last 5 or 6 years of what people are getting. And it's a specific attack on Catholic imagery.
It's always like dark priests and nuns. It's never going to be like a Protestant guy.
I just saw a guy had a tattoo of George Soros dressed as the Pope.
What? That's wild.
It's like, so
I wonder if anyone's going to get the Trump as the Pope tattoo.
He already put himself up on his profile. You didn't see on his
That's what I'm saying.
I know.
If
If he's gonna take that picture and get it tattooed
did
on
he
them.
do that? He didn't do that.
Yeah.
that.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the matter with him?
Yeah.
People, I don't know. But the thing about getting back to the blessed miraculous medal, so everyone who comes into my tattoo shop gets a blessed miraculous medal, right? So that makes it a ministry.
Mhm.
And since my clients are from all over the world, it's not often that I get a lot of English speakers. I have a tremendous amount of clients from France. I keep guest books, so I got guest books
Oh, that's really cool.
for years.
That's
you know.
pretty
Good
cool.
idea.
Yeah.
I signed the guest book, and I had people come from Easter Island. You know,
Wow.
yeah. I had people from South Africa. I mean, Canada. You know, you name it, and every single day. Like one group would be from France, another group would be from Germany, another group would be from Australia. You know, so I give everybody these blessed miraculous medals,
hmm
and now they're taking them all over the world with them when they go back home. So it makes it a worldwide ministry. And people who would never walk to a Catholic church will walk into my shop, and people who would normally never get a blessed miraculous medal will get one. And there's a reason why I give them, because I hope there's conversions through them. You know, people who aren't Catholics, I hope they become a Catholic. If they're not good Catholics, I hope they become a better Catholic. If they're better Catholics, I hope they become great Catholics. And there are a lot of conversions, a lot of conversions through that medal. So my shop is actually a ministry, and I pondered. I mean, I had conversations with a lot of Catholic priests. I had conversations with 3 different exorcists about what I'm doing. And, you know, some people would be like, well, you know, you're a Catholic and you're a Christian and you're not supposed to get tattooed. No, that's not true. Crusaders got tattooed. They were covered in Christian tattoos.
Yeah, the Crusaders did get tattoos.
Yeah, well, that's if they got dismembered in battle, that, you know, that body part needed to be identified as Catholic so it can get a Catholic burial.
Not to cut you off, but John was telling me about that the Crusaders would come get tattooed in Jerusalem. There was like a
Yeah.
There's
There's an old tattoo,
Yeah.
Razook tattoo in Jerusalem. where
They've been over 700 years in the same location.
1300 since 1300, dude.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That is wild, dude.
Yeah, they're still there, and they do a lot of Coptic images, you know, Coptic Christian images.
hmm
That's
They still do their stencils are still stamps. It's just a
Yeah.
stamp.
they have them. Yeah,
This old stamps, bro. It's
Well, like a rubber stamp. Like, what are you talking
it's
about?
like made out of, I forgot what it is because I didn't get to go that day.
It's a piece of like olive wood with little needles in it in an image, and they just dip it in and go poof, stamp it on you.
Wow.
Yeah,
Damn.
But they have like
I want
they have
one
all
of
these
those.
stamps for the tattoos, and then they'll like now this is fun, hilarious. So a bunch of tattoo artists that came on this trip got tattooed, and shout out to Oliver Peck. He did not get tattooed because they were using pens.
They were using rotary pens?
Yeah, they were using
Oh man.
rotary pens. He's like,
You know
nah.
Shout out to Oliver, because I also agree with that. Like, I'd be like, oh man, I really want to get this tattoo from this like ancient shop, but if I hear like no sound, I'm gonna be like,
they were like, back then it was so ancient, there was no sound.
There
We
was
used
no
to just
sound,
use
yeah,
what he was
exactly.
just saying. We're like, we would just put this in a thing, just be like, pop, you got a tat, dude.
right. And you know, tattooing. You know, they say, well, it says don't get tattooed in the Bible. No, it doesn't. It never did. That's an edit. The word tattoo didn't show up until 1762, I believe. It was Captain Cook. It was in his travel logs. I don't know where he was. It was Tahiti, or he was in
It was one of the
Polynesian
one of the
islands.
Polynesian islands.
And that was how he described. He couldn't describe what he was seeing, you know, in the sound, and it was actually just whacking a pig ivory with a stick.
Mhm.
So he described the word as
Tatau.
Tatou, or I forget what the exact, but that's where the word came from. But the Douay Rheims Bible, you know, was not written in 1760. You know, that's they're you know, so far off. So the word actually isn't in the Bible. The word tattoo.
The word tattoo is not in there at all.
No,
right?
it's not. It's in edited forms. I mean, if you know, you'll find it in the King James Bible, and there's other Bibles that put the word in there, but that's also called heresy. You know,
yeah, when you're changing the
it's heretical.
yeah,
You can't
yeah.
do that. Yeah,
because I believe it was different in like the Greek Septuagint. It's like a different word. It's not a
yeah. Well, you know, people will say, well, it's the translation. You know, but that word, it just didn't exist. You know, I think Aramaic only has like 30,000 words, and I think Greek maybe had 40,000 words. The English language has 80,000 words. So we have a lot more ways to throw stuff in there to kind of, you know, to try to refine it. And that's why I think that's why they threw that word, threw that word in there, tattooing in the Bible, but it doesn't really say that. You know, what what they meant was you don't mark yourselves in veneration of ancestors that you looked at as gods, that you worshiping your dead ancestors.
Yeah, that's why it says do not mark yourself like the pagans do.
Right. And that's, well, yeah, because those Jews that Moses was going around the desert with when God was mad at them. I mean, those old Mosaic laws were brutal.
Yeah,
and it was a reason why, because they were out of their mind. They were like, there was pagan idolatry. It was all over the place.
There was no confession. It was more like, oh crap, I sinned. Now I got to slaughter this like unblemished animal.
Yeah, and
the sins. I forgot how exactly, but they have to like slaughter like an innocent an animal.
Well, they would make sacrifice.
They would make sacrifices,
and then you'd have to publicly declare your sins. But when Moses came down with all those rules and the Mosaic laws, I think there's 613 of them, and there was a lot of things like don't eat pork, don't eat shellfish,
don't trim your beard,
right? Don't trim. Yeah, well, people. That's what a lot of people will say is I think it's Leviticus 1927 or 27.
Real strict.
1927. Do not get tattooed. Well, first of all, it doesn't say that, but if you look at Leviticus 1926, I think it is. Right before it says, don't shave your beard.
Right.
So you're going to tell me not to get a tattoo, but a clean shaven person, right? So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Steadfast Tattoo Supply, owned and operated by professional working tattoo artist Frankie Porcelli, demanding top-performing materials, from the highest quality pigments and medical supplies to tailor-made needles and cartridges with true line weights. Steadfast also specializes in custom machines built from scratch in-house and offers professional or group machine building seminars. Steadfast does everything to keep you and your clients covered. Steadfast, supplies that work as hard as you do.
Well, I certainly don't judge anybody.
No.
There's a lot of tattoos that I will not do on people, and benign stuff that you wouldn't think.
Like what? Give us an example.
Angel numbers.
That's a hot one right now.
It's very popular right now.
Yeah, it is. Tell me, what angel did God give number 444 to?
No idea.
None. Angels don't have numbers; they have names.
Yeah.
So that's an occult thing. People don't realize it.
Yeah, I've been curious. What does that whole thing mean? Like, why?
It's an occult number. It's symbolic of most likely of a particular demon, or a particular deity, which would be a demon.
So is that similar to what like we all know as 666 is the devil's number?
Well, so, yeah, 666 is the number that was given, it's the mark of the beast, right? So, but there's a lot of different interpretations. Is it an actual person, or is it a barcode, or what is it? I mean, there's a million ways to go about that. But we'll focus on angel numbers for a second. So they'll say, like, I think 444, it says this is for protection. Well, who said the number 444 was for protection, and protection from who?
Yeah.
God certainly didn't say 444 is the number for protection. So you're being tricked into putting a series of numbers on you, and you're calling it an angel number. Oh, it sounds so cute, but it's actually demonic. That transfers into all kinds of things like pornography. Every pornographic image has a demon behind it. Every single frame, there's a different demon for every single one.
What?
If you lack the knowledge, like, you won't know that there's like a demon behind some. That's like right. Like games, movies, television. Yes. Anytime there's occult imagery, there's a demon behind it. Is basically the theory.
It's everywhere you look. Look, I won't do Harry Potter tattoos. Absolutely not. Those spells in the Harry Potter books are real spells.
They're real spells. Not only that, the Vatican has a whole section devoted to Harry Potter. Like,
what?
Yep.
Well, the
dude,
the upper echelon of the hierarchy in the Catholic Church, there's been infiltration by Satanists. People are very aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in any big organization, you have the sort of infiltrations. A lot of like psych meds. A lot of these psych meds, they bring in like Wiccan witches and stuff like that to bless these meds. These big companies.
Yep.
I'm not going to mention names of companies, but
right.
But they have their own little Satanists that come in and put blessings on these.
But people don't believe that because they don't see the behind the scenes, so they think.
But they wonder why they're addicted to it,
right?
And look what happens to people taking psych meds. How sick they are. You know, I mean, they get worse and worse. And then you take the psych med that you can't stop taking or you're going to get really ill.
Oh, you're going to love this one. There was this YouTuber, but he had come to find out that that famous water company, Liquid Death, actually has somebody like satanically blessing the water.
Yeah.
No way, dude.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
bro.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But
I didn't know this was a tinfoil hat day, dude. It's like, what?
Well, you should get all your tattoo equipment. You should get it blessed. All that stuff. You don't know whose hands it came through to get to you, and who put what kind of blessing on it. Because the order of the day is Satan right now. I mean, everybody's all about Satan. Look at even the little old Taylor Swift. Look at her. You know, she's holding black masses on stage. This
she's
little country.
She's an out there witch.
Yeah,
but a lot of people are like, she's not a witch. I'll be like, just look at her tweets, look at everything, look at the performance you're watching.
Yeah.
Like it's a literal like, oh, it's for entertainment. She's having an occult seance on screen. Lady Gaga, the same thing. I had an argument with somebody the other day, and I was like, she's not a Satanist. I was like, excuse my bad language. Use your fucking eyes.
All you gotta do is look at it.
Yeah, just look at it. It's all just like the colors they use, the dances, the movements, the lyrics. People don't pay attention to lyrics anymore.
Well, a lot of the stuff that you hear, you know, there's satanic incantations put into the lyrics themselves. And it'll just be a word here, a word there, and people don't know. You know, they don't catch it. And it used to be more hidden, but I mean, right now it's just it's blaring. Look, when I was a kid, I used to listen to King Diamond and Merciful Fate, and you know, Possessed and Slayer, and all. I was a big death metal head. You know, I was all about that stuff. But that was that was a very minute part of metal, right? But now, I mean, I heard some hip hop guy, like no, it's hip hop. Hip hop is huge. Everybody listens to it.
Huge.
And one guy's going, if the Virgin Mary had an abortion, I'm like, what? what did you just say? What kind of? But they're not hiding it. You know, they're just not hiding it anymore.
Well, because it's fashionable to be like so against it.
Yeah.
And the thing is that like deep down inside, like a lot of these people, they actually do believe in Jesus and like his life, his death, and his resurrection. But like, let me give you one example. 21 Savage. He was on this one interview that I was listening, and he's like, man, listen, you think that I'm going to make the money that I make if I all of a sudden start rapping about Jesus? He's like, there's a reason why I don't, you know, because
then he'd be gospel music.
Yeah, because then he'd be Christian rap.
That's what I mean. He would be doing gospel music. He'd be doing Christian rap.
Right. Well, you know, as soon as you start talking about God, you get attacked.
Right.
And I'm sure that when people hear this, there's gonna be a few of them and be like,
oh, for sure.
No, of course, because then the people are gonna be like, John's like, this is gonna be a tinfoil.
Yeah, no, I'll pray for.
They're gonna be like, this podcast is supposed to be about tattoos, not Jesus.
Exactly.
I absolutely don't judge anybody. You know, it's everybody.
No,
you know,
exactly.
I'm nobody's judge. Look, I grew up in Hell's Kitchen. I was pretty wild when I was young, and I've been to prison a couple of times, and I was in Rikers Island a few times, and you know, I was wild. I wasn't the nicest kid on the block, you know. But you know, over time, you know, I've definitely come back to my faith, and so now the shop is a ministry because there's Catholic tattooers, but there's nobody out there actually evangelizing, you know. And when I give everybody miraculous metal, I tell them this is a blessed miraculous metal of Blessed Mother. And I had a discussion with an exorcist named Father Lampert about what I'm doing. Because
Father Lampert, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, Father Lampert. Yeah, he's a very famous exorcist.
Okay, I'm sure he's on YouTube because I've heard him before.
Yeah. Well, I had to talk with him for like face to face. I was having a chat with him, and I said, look, you know, a lot of people they attack tattooing, so I changed my shop to a ministry for the Blessed Mother, for the miraculous metal. So now, when I decide whether or not I'm going to tattoo somebody, I look and I say, what is the image and what is the intent of the image? You know, so it's not necessarily like little hot stuff devils. I won't do them because I don't care how cute it is. It's a picture of Satan, right? But if say a girl wants a little butterfly, I don't have a problem with that. But if she wants a butterfly flittering across her pubic area, that I'm not doing, because now she's trying to make herself more sexually attractive by putting this little butterfly in her pubic area, which is sinful. So that's the intent. So what is the image and what is the intent? You see? Yeah. And I explain this to some of these young girls and they're like, really? I never thought about that. I'm like, well, yeah, here's your medal. You know?
Shout out to Matt Buck. Matt Buck is a Messianic Jew. And now he's at a point in his tattooing that he turns down a lot of stuff because if it's like, and he'll ask the questions, what is this? If he's not familiar with the imagery, he'll ask, what does this mean? Or like if something's in like Tibetan or something, or just like, what's this mantra mean?
Right.
Is it a prayer to like a deity or a god? Right. And he won't do it.
I want to meet this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a shame he's not here tonight.
Shame he's not here tonight. He would have loved to be here.
He would have loved to be discussing like tattoos, religion, and the connection between them. Yeah, he would love to be.
Do you do?
There's the title for this episode.
I know. Bing. Do you do tattoos of like religious tattoos? Do you do any?
I mean, I have. I've been tattooing since 89, and in my estimate, I would estimate that I've done in the neighborhood of 60,000 pieces at least over the years. And I've done pretty much everything you could think of. Even when I was younger, I had no problem tattooing devils on people. Back in the 90s, going through the 90s, because we were all partying back then. We were all out all night, get hammered, come back, and just nobody really cared. But I don't get to do that kind of stuff anymore just because of my location.
Right.
We do not make appointments. Appointments interfere with the work.
Right.
I got 8, 10, 12 people waiting and somebody's late for an appointment. I'm not having it. You know what I mean? So it's strictly walking, but I don't get to do that kind of stuff anymore. And again, I'm a professional tattooer. It's what I do. So many guys out there, they're complaining and whining that people want this, this little piece and I'm sick of doing it. Then don't do it. You're a professional tattooer. They're paying you to tattoo them. Well, do it. Do the tattoo. Why are you complaining? It's money. You know what I mean? And and another thing is they get pissy with the customers, some of these people, over the little stuff. You get a tattoo from somebody and if they're a dick to you, you will remember that the rest of your life every time you look at that piece.
For sure. Yep.
You have to have a bedside manner. You have to have a good bedside manner. And if you don't like the image, you don't want to do it, be polite and tell them.
Yeah.
Because when they got dementia, they're always going to look at that tattoo and remember that guy was a dick. You know what I mean? Yeah. They're always going to remember that.
Yeah. Don't do a tattoo with a stank face.
No, you got to be nice to people, man. You have to, just because you don't care to do what they want, that's arrogance. That's ego. Just swallow that.
That's what I always think. It's the ego of like, but I want to express my art and I want your skin for it.
Well, then you got to then find somebody you can express your art on. If somebody's coming to you because they want to express their art on themselves and they want you to do it, well, then do it.
Right. Yeah. That's the way it should be.
Yeah. But you definitely have to have a good bedside manner with people. You really do. They never forget, man.
Because a lot of people they don't frequent tattoo shops as much as we're used to being around that environment. So a lot of people are walking into a tattoo shop, walking in intimidated because they don't know what to expect.
That's right.
And when they come in and they're treated like crap, like you said, they're going to remember that forever.
Absolutely.
I wonder how many shops are still like that these days.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's got to be
a lot. I get people that come in all the time saying, I went to this other shop and they were just so mean.
How much of that is just people being oversensitive though?
That's a good, that's a good point. And I really can't say because I wasn't there when the incident happened.
Yeah. Well, obviously.
Yeah.
But I'm sure some of it definitely, you're on the mark on that. And I don't doubt that. But I've been tattooing for over 30 years and I know a lot of guys, that were just douches to people. They were.
I think those were the times where people could afford to be douches to people because they had so many people coming in the door.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're like, there's like another 15 of you. But now it's like, dude, people that are still like, waiting for those walk-ins to come in the doors. Like, bro, treat every customer like gold.
Yeah. Because if I'm busy today, right, but I was a dick, I'm losing on tomorrow's money.
Yeah. Anybody that person could refer to you, any of that, it's gone.
Yeah. Because this is the way that I always think about it, and I'm always going to be thankful when things are that busy that I can turn away customers. But the fact of the matter is that I always have it in my mind that maybe you left such a good impression on that person that you didn't have time for that day, that they were like, all right, well, I'm not going to get my tattoo today because I want to get it from you when you got time for me.
Yeah,
Which is like, future money.
for sure.
So exactly what you said. And I've worked with a lot of people like that too. They were just like, just
Yeah,
dicks.
I've worked with a lot. I now work with a lot of humble people too. I'm not besmirching every artist I ever worked with.
Yeah,
Of course.
Yeah.
And I work with a lot of really, really good and really intense people. And I've met and learned a lot from a lot of people over the years. Like I used to pal around with Anil Gupta back in the 90s. We were pretty tight, and I got a lot of work from him. And I would pick his brains, and he was always just free to talk. And these days, I don't think he really talks to people that much. He's over it.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a time when H.R. Giger was hanging around his shop, and there was and he was tattooing all the Susan Sarandon and all these big stars. He was like a celebrity tattooer. So I went into a shop once, and he's got a microscope out, and he's looking through the microscope. I'm like, Anil, what are you doing? He's got a very heavy Indian accent. I think he's Bangladeshi, but he said, I'm looking at talons to find out why this goes into the skin so much better than all the other pigments. And he said, I found out because all the particles are ground down finer. So and that's the way he thought.
He just thought about it like that.
Yeah.
That's
It
wild.
wasn't just what brand. He wants to know why this particular brand is going in better. And so,
Yeah.
I learned a lot from him, like, for instance, I've been tattooing again since 89, and I used a mag twice in my life. I've been using rounds the entire time.
Oh shit.
Wow.
Yeah. I back in 94, I used a mag once. I didn't like it. I tried it again. I didn't like it. I never used a mag again.
How big of a round are you going?
There was a while I was using up to 100.
Damn.
Yeah. I used to have Wes over at Unimax make me the tubes and make me the needles.
What?
But I learned that from Philip Lou though, so I went to Wes and had him make me 42 rounds. But that wasn't my idea. It was Philip Lou's. I had to talk with Philip Lou at a convention, I think in New Jersey around 99 or 2000. And
That's wild.
Philip Lou was doing, one of those big Hanye masks, like back pieces. And he's standing there. He's got ink just all over his face and up and down his arms. He's just splattered. Like he don't care. And, at that time, it's the height of the AIDS epidemic. Everybody's dropping dead AIDS. And Philip's, he don't care. He's got ink all over him, And he's on the corner, and I'm watching him, and he's dipping this needle, and then he's just rolling and rolling and rolling, and it's just going on and on and on and on. It's a beautiful, beautiful just watch. I said, and I didn't know the man. I never met him before. I said, excuse me, can you show me what it is that you're using? Because I'm looking at that tube tip, and it's big. Most gracious guy in the world. He just stopped immediately. He says, oh, yeah, let me show you what I'm doing here. So he shows me that. He said, this is a 42 round. He said, but what I'm doing is when I make these needles, I'm pulling out the center 6 or 8 needles so that I have an ink cap actually inside the needle.
Yeah.
So then when he's dipping it, he's got an ink cap in the needle. That's how he just kept going on and on. And it's one of the ways he got that nice even gradient in such huge areas.
Wow.
So right away, I run off the West, because I'm not making no 42s. I don't have any jigs for that. I got 14s and that was it, my jigs.
Yeah.
And if I was going to make a jig for it, then I got to cut a beer can and roll it up and then solder it on until I got needle bar. And I ran down to Wes. I was like, Wes, I need 42 rounds, make me 42 rounds. So I said, I was talking to Philip Lou. Okay. So then Wes makes me 42 rounds, and he had to make tubes for them. And he made them for me for about a year before he started selling them. And he was advertising his jumbo rounds. So after 6-8 months of that, I was like, well, why can't I use 100 rounds? Wes, make me some 100 rounds, and he did. And
That's cool.
I didn't do heavy work with that stuff. I was using it like the way Philip Lou was using it, like for a big, if I was doing a back piece, just a gray wash in the background just to cover a big area, but get a nice even gradient. It was so easy to get an even gradient because the needle was like a Sharpie marker.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
that was that.
What was it about a mag that you didn't like?
I started out with flats. I mean, that's how long ago it was.
Mm-hmm.
When I actually started like knowing other tattooers, and Neil was one of the first guys. So I was getting tattooed at Sacred Tattoo. Back then it was called Kaleidoscope. West from Unimax on it. And Neil was working there. and when I spoke to Neil, and he said that he didn't use rounds at all. I was like, well, why not? He said, because he said, imagine it's like, you're using you get the same thing every direction you go. And I had only been using flats, I was using flats at that time. So, and that was, again, a long time ago. But when I went to work in Brooklyn, when Studio Enigma opened up, I did the first tattoo in their shop. And everybody was using mags. And I was already using rounds because I was talking to Anil, and I was like, all right, I'll try using a mag. And it just wasn't for me. I didn't care for it. I didn't. I went right back to my rounds.
Yeah. So
I pretty much went straight from flats to rounds. When I first started, I had the big Joe Kaplan tattoo kit. I was just, I went up to Westchester and bought the stuff, and I had the autoclave that you stick on a stove. If you don't watch it, your house is going to blow up. You know what I mean?
Oh shit.
And and for that first year, because when I started, there was nobody was going to teach you anything. Nobody was telling you anything. You really had to you had to live, eat, and breathe tattooing in order to break in somewhere. You know what I mean? And nobody was about telling anybody anything. Everybody was, try to go open up a shop next door to Mike Perfetto back in 1977 to see what happened. You know what I mean? Or Tony Polito, one of those guys. Try to open up a shop next door to those guys. I mean, that's how it was. They don't want to tell anybody anything. But I'm sorry, where was I going with that? I kind of lost my train of thought for a second.
We were asking why you didn't like mags.
Oh yeah, I mean, I used them a couple of times. Everybody was using them, but I'd already been using rounds because they were just easier to use, and well, everybody else is using really good of a shot, and I don't know. I just didn't care for them.
Man, when I started, I would use 14 rounds, to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, that sounds insane.
I was using a 14 round today to color some stuff in.
Oh, for real?
To color some beads.
I colored entire back pieces of 14 rounds. Yeah. But look, it doesn't really. It's not the configuration of the needle. I mean.
It's not the arrow.
If you keep using the same thing over and over and over again, you're going to get good with it.
Yeah, of course.
Look at Jack Rudy. He did back pieces with a single needle.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
The bottom line is the needle goes up and down, and
correct.
There's no, and however you choose to achieve that is up to you.
Yeah,
but there's no. Like you have to, if you have to use mags.
There's no must. Yeah.
Like, man, I've been doing nothing but rounds for almost 40 years now. It's like, and I don't know. I think my work was pretty okay. Yeah. I don't want to toot my horn on him.
Dude,
I'm not bad. There's guys out there that just, even there's a lot of these little peanuts running around that they showed up like last week, and all of a sudden I'm looking at pieces. I'm like, how did you get that good that fast?
Yeah, that blows my mind.
Yeah.
It took me like 6 years before I was able to get that kind of, achieve that,
I feel like, now there's so much more information. It's just like you kept saying, like before nobody would give you any information. Now there's so much information out there.
But, when I went to work for Studio Enigma in Brooklyn, that was a storefront, and that was the first storefront. And cops came by when they were opening up. And they talked to the guy who was opening it, and he knew him from the neighborhood, so they left. And then there were tattooers who were in New York, who are very well-known tattooers now, that came through there, and I learned a lot from those guys, like Marcus Kuhn, for instance. I worked with Marcus for a couple of years, and we used to hang around a lot. Marcus taught me how to make needles. Like I think I was telling you earlier, there was a time when even in the 90s when part of the setup was making a needle.
Yeah.
The piece, that's because we were out partying all night. Nobody had any needles. Nobody went to, to go buy
any. Bought any.
Yeah. Nobody took the time to make any. So like, with a hangover and what do you want? I knock out of the, tight 3 and I had a shader on the spot. I
had a client years ago. She worked for a repo company, and she took a car, and inside the car was a whole needle jig kit. So she gave it to me. And this was like a couple of years after my apprenticeship. I learned how to make needles in my apprenticeship, and I was like, fuck this. I don't want anything to do with this anymore. And I sold it. And now to this day, I'm like, fuck, man, I should have
just kept that J.
I
Yeah.
was literally gonna ask you. I'm like, give it to me.
Give me that J.
Yeah.
I did that with a lot of machines. I had some really rare pieces that I was like, I just gave them, here, you need a machine to take it, and I'm not, I'm like,
Oh, man.
Think about now, why did I do that,
Guys, today, I put my rotary down and I picked up a coil machine.
Do the clap.
Congratulations.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. It was...
You know why? Because we got a new pope. That's why. We got a new pope today.
That's
Today's
so
the day.
Oh, you felt the change.
Yeah, it was like, also, I broke my Apple Pencil, so I had to freehand.
Oh, you poor kid.
Listen to that, guys.
Divine intervention.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But I was like, I guess I got to work without this. But, ultimately, it's like, what are you going to do, man? You got to just learn how to use your tools.
I'm not a big fan of the iPad. I never use one. I just don't. I draw my stuff up faster than they do. But I think it's the enemy of hand-eye coordination. Also, sometimes when you're doing something very intricate and you come across things that it kind of throws you off. You didn't like oh, I didn't think about this, on some pieces. But if you draw through it by hand, at least once, there's no surprises when you're coming up into something intricate, like you doing the tribal sleeve and then wind up coloring the wrong part of it.
Yeah. The thing that I find most problematic is when you're drawing, let's say on paper, let's say I'm going to draw a sleeve for you. I would originally, before I got an iPad, take tracing paper, outline your arm, and now draw two sides. Obviously, the iPad screen is much smaller than your arm.
You're tracing the barriers that you see from the...
Right.
Yeah.
So what will you do? You're going to get into those details by zooming into your drawing. And people often, they paint themselves into a corner. They zoom in so much. Now they're drawing little tiny details. Now they're zooming out again. And those things are just not tattooable. You just wasted all your time drawing all this crazy detail that you can't even tattoo.
Right.
Simplify.
So.
Yeah, well, you know what? I mean, you do that 2 or 3 times and you'll stop doing it.
That's the goal. You would think that.
Yeah, you would think it, right? That's true.
You're going to have all these little angry tatter tots. Get with the times, boomer.
No, I don't. Look, if whatever makes you be able to do a beautiful piece that somebody's going to carry around the rest of their life, I mean, I'm all for it.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm not a fan of these the pens, the plastic pens, and I get there's other reasons other than just being an old guy that uses coils and I use old flywheel machines too, but what people like to call them cams, but they're really called flywheels.
Flywheels? What's a flywheel?
That was what you had one.
Direct drive.
A direct drive.
Yeah, those are they're called flywheels. But one of the things about the pens is there was a time when you couldn't buy anything from supply companies unless you were a tattooer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's over with. So a lot of people, the crew that I came up with, we lived, we ate, and we breathed tattooing. Now I have women that come in and say, well, my daughter's going to be a tattoo artist because she's artistic.
Oh, man.
I'm like, are you sure that that's a great idea? She's coming to me to get a tattoo because she won't let her daughter tattoo her till her daughter gets more practice. But her daughter's opening up a shop very soon.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I mean, I'm thinking, all right, open the shop. I hope it works out for you. I do. But it was different with us, man. I mean, we were sitting around like a Neil looking through the microscope at the ink. You're not going to find that now. But also those pens, I mean, they're made in China. I'm not a fan of anything that's made in China. And
for Germany,
it's like it's the slave labor shit. There's bad energy coming with those immediately. You know what I mean? Just the whole process and these people working for nothing, literally slave labor. And that's who's making these. And then you're tattooing with it. And that, which brings me to another thing. What I'm listening to when I'm working, and like in my shop, I'm playing Bach and Mozart and Wagner and, Tchaikovsky and Chopin all day long. I'll play some old school, old Delta blues or a lot of Gregorian chants. You're not going to walk into my shop and hear, like violent lyrics, hip hop, screaming, yelling, because that reflects in the work. In my opinion, it shows up in the work.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So if I'm playing Bach, it looks like I was listening to Bach when I did the piece. If I'm playing, old Venom, it's going to look like Venom. You know what I mean? And I'm not talking about Venom, the cartoon character, for people who don't know. Right. I'm talking about the original satanic band Venom. You know what I mean? I was a big fan of that stuff when I was a kid. But, or even...
If you were to listen to it now, can you get into it?
No.
No? Totally shut it down.
I listened to that. I went to all those shows. I saw a lot of shows that people would know. Like the very first show I ever saw was Venom, Black Flag, and Overkill in 1986 in New Jersey, in Trenton Gardens, in a tiny little venue. And it's unfortunate that I know the lyrics to all that satanic shit better than I know my prayers, because that's how much I listen to it, And, it's angry music for angry people.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people too now, though, get those kind of tattoos just because they've completely been desensitized by everything they've seen, like if something like just becomes more mainstream, you don't really
that's
think about it anymore.
That's a major goal, desensitizing people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look what happens now. People go into an Applebee's and they get into a minor, tiff over the bill, and they tear the Applebee's apart. It's everywhere. It's not just, it's in the media, it's in restaurants. Everywhere you go, everybody's acting violent. Everybody's aggressive. Everybody's angry. Everybody's pissed off.
Oh yeah.
It's just, and the tattooing, it's, the imagery is, the majority of what I see being put out there is violent. It's
definitely much darker than what it used to be.
Yeah, man. It's like burning churches. And so I'm looking at guys with back pieces of burning churches. I'm like, why? Why would you do that?
They listen to dark Norwegian metal. That's why.
And those guys are running around burning churches. That band Mayhem, they were doing all that stuff.
Those guys are crazy.
They're like, they're I've met them. They're the sweetest guys.
But they're the sweetest guys. Yeah, they're the sweetest guys.
Yeah, but they don't attend their like Black Sabbaths and see them right. You know what I mean?
Right. And
a lot of Satanists are actually super nice people, because they're just like.
Well, until they're putting a spell on you and throwing.
Well, that's what I mean. People are like, you got to be an idiot if you think a Satanist is just going to be like, let's say, just outwardly evil and not trying to be charismatic or nice, or you know what I mean? Where it's just
there's a lot of Satanists.
Everyone has a facade.
Yeah, absolutely.
How you are with complete strangers, the character that you put out, is different than how you are with your children, how you are at church, how you are at with your wife. We all wear different masks, or at least a lot of people do.
Well, Satanists, they're all around too. Look, there's judges, there's lawyers, there's they're Satanists.
I like to call them the Masons. And basically the infiltration of the Masons, and they're everywhere.
Well, they're a secret society, and secret societies are outlawed by the Catholic Church. But I'm also, when I'm not tattooing, I travel. I'm a traveling assistant to Zachary King, and Zachary King was a former high wizard and the largest coven in the world.
Wow!
And he had a conversion through the miraculous metal that I gave you. So that's what brought me specifically to the miraculous metal. Zachary, he cast spells for some serious people for some serious money. His coven took and I'm not talking about $5,000. I'm talking about millions.
What?
Oh yeah, you can actually look, if you want to hear the story, look up Zachary King on YouTube. He's an assistant. He's blind now and he's in a wheelchair. So when he travels around, we were just in Ontario recently. He's going to be in Staten Island. We're going to be going to Fresno, Brazil. I'm supposed to go to the Vatican. Hopefully that happens this year, sometime by the end of the year, because there's an exorcist in the Vatican. We were supposed to go to India with this exorcist in India. He was invited, but that exorcist got called to Rome to do more training in Rome. So,
that's insane.
So Zachary may be going there. Zachary assists exorcists during exorcisms. One of the things that he does is if, a priest is doing an exorcism, they need to get the name of the demon. They need the demon to actually say its name.
Because they also have they also have a role and a hierarchy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And basically, not everybody can just exorcise a demon.
No, you have to be.
You have to get like permission by the bishop, or so like just like have priests have authority,
right?
And there's like levels to it.
Yes.
So do demons.
Yeah, and you can't just walk up and do an exorcism. You have to get first of all, the only one who has the true authority to cast out demons is someone who has had their hands consecrated by a bishop,
right?
Which is the Catholic priest,
right?
So you notice everybody mocks Catholics until someone's climbing up the side of the wall or walking on the ceiling, and
then
all of a sudden they come running to the Catholics,
dude. And they'll always come. They'll always like, oh, we got to get a Catholic priest. It's always gone that way.
Yeah. But, and when you were talking about the hierarchy, when people get possessed, they're not typically not by one, it's by a lot.
Yeah. So
during the exorcism, when they're casting out the demons, it's the weaker ones that get thrown out first. But, this gentleman he speaks, he tells his story, and he can't go and speak in churches and stuff unless the bishop gives him permission.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's not like he could just walk anywhere and speak. He's got to get that bishop's permission. And if you're getting the permission from a bishop to talk about possession and Satanism and stuff, that's not a light thing. You have to get letters like the bishop. You have to have bishop's letters they wrote and said, this guy is authentic, So what happens with Zach is some of the things he does to help exorcist during exorcism, they got to get the demon's name. And if they can't get the demon's name, it's very difficult for them to get the demon out. Mm-hmm. They'll call Zach. And Zach will go and pray on it. He'll go to a church. He'll go to the adoration chapel. You know where the Eucharist is in the monstrance, and you sit and you ponder.
Yep.
And he will sit and he will pray, and then he will speak with Christ. I mean, Christ will be there. Zach's a mystic. He's an authentic mystic. So Christ will tell him the demon's name, and then he will call the exorcist and give the exorcist the demon's name.
Yeah.
And then when the exorcist says, "I know your name," demon's like, "How do you know my name?" And boom, he's out. And then the exorcist will call Zach back and say, "You were right." He's like, "Yeah, I know I was."
Because it's all about identification.
You'll find it.
That's why we have names, not numbers.
Yeah.
Our names are important.
Yes.
That's why, the names, the angels have names, demons have names. Everything has a name.
That brings us back to angel numbers. Angels don't have numbers. They got names.
Right.
Angel numbers that's an occult thing. That's not angel numbers.
Ooh, the listeners are going to love this episode.
They were like, oh my God,
yeah,
what is this?
What?
That 111 that I just had.
Yeah.
It's 1111.
Yeah, I've seen that one too. Yeah.
1111. Oh my God.
Oh, this is crazy.
222 is popular.
But you know what?
What is 222?
You know what?
Angel numbers. I don't know.
I'll be honest with you guys.
I like 777. That's the one for get a cap.
I'm glad we're talking about this because so much of people are oblivious when it comes to tattoos, because these images that we're putting on ourselves, they mean so much. And a lot of them it's just being drowned out by fashion and trends. But tattoo and the beginning of tattoos has always been about just look at all the ancient tribes that were tattooing themselves. They weren't tattooing themselves because it was cool. They were tattooing themselves because there were rites of passage. There was a spiritual connection. It was occult.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of significance to it, and it's wild to me that people are, and like you were explaining, there was a lot of stuff that I was literally tattooing on people that I was just oblivious.
Yeah.
Oblivious.
You don't really think much of it. You don't. Hot stuff devil.
No, you don't think about any, I mean, oh, it's cute and this and that,
so we just put a demon on you.
So, to the listeners, they might think this is kind of silly or whatnot because they've probably done hundreds of this. But I remember I was doing this, this Friday the 13th years ago, and we were just cranking out this, these just tattoos left and right. And on this, and this was during a time where I wasn't back in my faith, and I wasn't a practicing Catholic. I was just doing whatever. And I remember there was this couple, dude with long black hair, his girlfriend also long black hair. They were a very dark looking couple, very, very dark. And it was my turn to go up. not my turn to go up. We were just handling like different lines of people. You know what I mean? People were right because, the line was out the door. There was hundreds of people getting tattooed that day. And they were like, Gabe, you're up. These two couple want these two tattoos. And on the flash sheet, there was a pentagram. And I remember just putting the stencil on.
And it burned right through their arms.
No. It wasn't anything like that. I did the tattoo and it came out immaculate. But I couldn't help but have this sinking feeling that I had done something very wrong. When before I used to be very cold about things. Like I didn't give a crap. I'd be like, you want some crazy like.
You want Beelzebub here, bro?
Exactly. Yeah. But that one, and I've held on to that one. And to most people, they'd be like, that's so silly. But that one stuck with me.
It's very profound. It's not silly, it's profound.
It stuck with me. And I've always thought about that. And I've still to this day, if I could reverse time, I would say no to those people because I feel like I was doing a disservice to them. Like I marked them with something that maybe they even regret. You know what I mean? And I feel like
know better.
You know what's funny is this like I now where I'm at in my life, I'm starting to really like feel like everything is spiritually linked. And that was kind of like one of the little like tests in life that I brutally failed.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but you know what? I mean, how many times did Christ fail? No, not fail, but how many times did he fall? He fell 3 times.
Right.
So anybody kept getting back up.
Yeah.
So as long as you keep getting back up, you're okay.
Right. But it was kind of like to me, it was like one of the many wake up calls that were building up in my life that I was just like, there's something more to this. There's a reason why I feel like guilty about it. And it's not anything like preset from like being, brought up Catholic and whatnot. Right. But
I got a lot of demonic stuff on me that I had over the years, and I actually had them decommissioned by an exorcist.
I was thinking about I was looking into the researching and I had came across the decommissioning some.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Decommission. It's basically like if you have any imagery that you may be oblivious to, that may be like demonic. Because the thing is that a lot of like things that we get tattooed on ourselves, they're actually like for example, I have this. I got this really, really dope ass Hania that my boy John Mesa did.
Yeah.
One of the cleanest tattoos. But I'm not ignorant to the fact that the Hania is a symbol of like it's a Japanese demon of like a vengeful woman, like a revenge thing.
Right.
So it's like, even my mom told me about that. She's like, she should really looking into, decommissioning. And I was like, what is that?
Yeah, I did.
And basically you get a priest or an exorcist to decommission your tattoos, because a lot of things that we just like images, right? Music, TVs, movies, signs, symbols, they're like portals. And they're literally like entryways to what a lot of people would think is demonic.
Decommissioning is prayers said in order to, like they're commissioned to the demonic. You're decommissioning. You're neutralizing any demonic attachment.
You're severing the connection.
But you can actually even have your parents do it, because your parents have authority over you. You can get, if your father's alive or your mother, you can actually have your parent do it. And
they're both very devout Catholics.
Yes. Yeah. The head of the household is whoever is the head of the household, and they have authority over the children. They can bless their children. They can cast out, there's a lot of things you could do. You can cast out demons, really, if you're the head of the household.
Man, that's so funny that you say that, because that's something that is so like normal in like Hispanic culture, right?
Yeah.
Like whenever you get home, like you ask for your elder's blessing.
That's right.
Yep.
When you're going to leave, you ask for your elder's blessing.
That's right. Yep. And that blessing is very powerful.
And you do that all the time. Like growing up as a little kid, that was such a normal thing that you did, and everybody did it. It was just like, wait, if you didn't do it, they'd be like, you don't ask for that blessing before you go leave?
Yeah, it's like you're going to walk out there naked in the world?
Right. But it's like, it's almost so, it's such a like I didn't even think about it like so much as that,
It's definitely in our culture.
It was just like, oh, it's just part of my culture. It's like what people do. I still like, tell my dad like, oh, Dad, blessing.
Yeah. The head of the household, you have authority over your family. And there's a lot of things that you can do that, you don't think you can, but you can, as far as again, like casting out demons and blessing the house, blessing the children. I mean, these are authentic blessings. These aren't just words.
Right.
So
Words are power.
Yeah, that's so crazy, man.
But one thing I wanted to get back to talking about with the tattooing real quick is, if anybody has a little bit of doubt about what they're doing, doing a tattoo. I mean, think about one day if you believe in God, and God does exist without a doubt. I mean, and he asks you, why did you put that image on my child? That ugly demon or that, that pornographic or obscene image. Why did you put that on my child? What's your answer going to be? For money? That can't be my answer. That cannot be my answer. I'd rather die poor and destitute than have to say, yeah, I did that for money. This, possessed nun or whatever stupid shit they're doing now. You know what I mean? That can't be my answer.
Well, shit, with that, I think that's a perfect way to close it out. Because that is a major food for thought.
Yeah.
I mean, I've tattooed, I feel like, a pretty equal amount of good and bad things in my...
Yeah, man. Same here.
Yeah.
Same here.
For every St. Michael I've done, there's been a demon down there getting his head squished that I tattooed. You know what I'm saying?
Facts.
Like,
I've done my share. I'm not a hypocrite, and I absolutely did all kinds of demonic stuff over the years, but that's that was then and this is now.
Yeah,
of course.
Well, guys, we would love to hear your thoughts on this conversation because this is a pretty interesting one.
Yeah, we're gonna need your comments, opinions, all that stuff.
Absolutely. Make sure that you join the chat below, and make sure that you also go on our Instagram because their posts are gonna be saucy. Tommy, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks so much for the medal.
Yes, thank you so much.
Really appreciate.
Thank you for that, and thanks for sharing.
Even though,
it was my pleasure. Thank you.
Even though, like, I'm not a very religious person per se, as far as like organized religion goes, I'll tell you guys that bit about myself. But I do believe that there is a power, just like what you said about like when you get your blessing from somebody like that.
Oh, yeah.
Same thing when somebody puts, like good thoughts, good energy, good whatever, into whether it is like into your home or into something that they give into you as a gift. I think that is something that translates into the world somehow.
Oh, yeah.
How I'm going to define that? You guys define it for yourself.
Because listen, because for every blessings, there are also curses.
Yeah.
So people don't believe that. It goes both ways. There's light and there's dark. Straight up. Like look at that. We're surrounded by it in the world. All the stuff we see on TV and movies, like that stuff is, a lot of it is true. Like we're in this battle between good and evil, and people think it's just like naturally like humanistic, like, oh, we just have those moral laws embedded in us. And to an extent, yes, but it comes by design and it comes from a designer.
Oh, shit. All right, guys. With that, we got to go.
All right. Guys, thanks for checking out the show. If you want to stick around and get a couple more minutes of extra content, head over to patreon.com/honest-tattooer. And we're going to have a couple of maybe like 10, 15 more minutes of conversation. And if you want to help support the show, that'll definitely do it for us.
Yeah. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Take care.
Sweet.
Peace.
All right.